I think that there's something that I say about this film is people are letting their freak flag fly, and it's an empowering.
Anwen, Harrison, thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate this.
Of course. Thank you for
Thanks for having
having
us.
us.
Honestly, this is such a beautiful and special film. The Bearded Girl is just truly wonderful. What excited you both to be a part of it?
I will say that I remember when I first saw the audition come through, I just saw the words "the bearded girl," and I got so excited. And I just wanted to wear a beard so badly. And then I got to read the script and kind of really get into Jodie's world building and the just the world that she created was so colorful and quirky and odd and I always grew up with that kind of those kind of stories and things. My mom was into those kind of stories, so when I read it, I remember really wanting to be a part of the world and um yeah, I was so in love with Cleo and just her kind of journey and her coming of age story and her self-acceptance and because I think it's such a universal story as well. Like, everyone goes through that experience and, tries to change themselves and, first love isn't always so great and is it really love? And yeah, I really love Jodie's world building and just Cleo's journey. And the beard. That because it's a beard. And I thought that was cool.
It's a full beard. It is a
It's a full
beard.
beard. I loved wearing it. You don't even know.
I, I I love that. I think that's great.
Yeah, I think for me, honestly think I saw an Instagram post first that was just circulating that showed like a horse, and it talked about like a character called Midnight, and it was a trans man. So, and I was like, it's a cowboy. So then when the actual audition came through an email and it said the masked cowboy, I was like, oh my gosh, this is this project. And being trans, like the kinds of roles that you hope to get, you're kind of like, oh, I just hope someone writes a trans character, but somebody to write a trans man like this as a cowboy, as a singer, with a full-fledged life. I just thought that it was so incredible to have this character, and I know a lot of my friends that in the trans, masculine, non-binary community, the actors were like, I want this role so bad. So everybody wanted it, and when I got it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is a dream. And I think it speaks to Jodie's world building, as Anwen was saying, that I think every person that was in this movie was like, this is such a dream role. And for
Mhm,
me, The Masked Cowboy was absolutely a dream role.
mhm,
You talk about world building, and that's one of the things I love about this film so much is that this is such a unique world, and yet still feels like ours. You know what I'm saying? Like it's a space that it's so full of hope, and celebration and joy, and yet there's all this tension for these characters. I was wondering, and forgive me here, but since we're talking about world building. Um, is beard like with the bearded lady culture? This seem like this they really celebrate it here, and I wondered like is there a deep respect in the bearded lady culture? Is that a thing, or was it specific for this film? Like, did you what did you find out about it?
I know that so Jodie has listen, I'm not as educated on Jodie's prep as
Of
she
course,
is,
of
but
course.
she did have inspiration from and I'm gonna butcher it, but I'm gonna try and recollect what she was saying. There was a saint hundreds of years ago, and her name was Liberata. It's unencumbered Liberata, I think, and that was a big part of Jodie's kind of preparation and looking into that. And the saint uh, was she was going to get married to a man and didn't want to and prayed to God and prayed and then grew a beard and got a beard so she didn't have to marry the man and her saint was very much like matriarchal, like the power in women and also justice and things like that. And I know that was a big part of Jodie's inspiration. And I don't know as much as her, and I hope I didn't butcher it, but I know that was some of what Jodie was kind of trying to pull like power from. And yeah.
That's interesting. Okay, because there was the reference to the symbol of matriarchy and Liberata's legacy, and
Yeah,
I did not catch what who that was. That makes a lot of sense with these
yeah.
characters. Yeah.
And
Okay.
she was crucified apparently. So yeah, so we had that in the Lady Andre, the Jessica Pare's her tenth, the Lady Liberata on the cross. So yeah, yeah,
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Because like I said, this there's something beautiful about this space, and now
yeah.
and it really feels like there's a lot of history behind it, and passing it on. And actually, that's interesting too with you both here because there is this balanced tension between tradition and I don't want to say new world, but modern ideas, young ideas, fresh ideas that's going on with these characters. And I wondered for you both playing these characters, can you talk about that tension for them as they're trying to figure things out?
I mean, I feel like for Cleo specifically, it's a lot of trying to break away from pressure and what you know are the world nocturna, the circus kind of town is such a small bubble and so isolated for Cleo. And I know that she, at least the way that I saw it through her eyes, was that she felt very isolated, and there was a lot of pressure to stay here and continue something and not go. And but there's a whole world out there, and I know that that is also such a universal experience of just being young and kind of coming into young adulthood and wanting to just go out and explore and not be in this one place anymore. Like you hear all of these stories from all the people around you and you're like, I want these stories and I want to go and just like dig my fingers in everywhere. So I know that she was dealing with a lot of pressure, and I can relate to it in a degree that's not like pressure, but the way that I grew up was on a horse farm with me and my siblings, and we were all homeschooled. So we were also, away from the town and away from a lot of people, kind of isolated. We did do community theater for social interaction, but that was like a couple times a week. So my mom also loved fantasy and loved uh, animated things and magical stories like The Dark Crystal and The Last Unicorn and Miyazaki and Peter Pan and all of that. So we were kind of surrounded by all of that. It felt so similar that I like grew up in this kind of isolated magical world. And then, when I was 19, 18, I remember being like, I want to move to Toronto and I want to move to the city and I want to, go out and make connections and do things like that. So I just feel like it's so, universal, and I could relate to it on that degree. But then the discovery of you can't make people love you, change yourself and force, you can't make people love you. You need to find your home base and the people that will uplift you and find your uniqueness special and foster that. And I don't know, I kind of see it as like a garden, and you're a plant and you want to plant like nice flowers and nice plants that will work with you and not eat you and kill you. Okay. Anyway.
Interesting visual. Interesting visual. No,
Welcome.
that's lovely. I think for the masked cowboy, there's not a lot of backstory for him in the script. He's kind of more of like a mysterious character, but there was something about talking with Jody about his world, because Jody had built out his world and told me a bit about his background that I can't tell you exactly because it's a spoiler. But there's something really interesting about this character, um, being a trans man and also being from a family that is not accepting, and he leaves the family. But the way that he really encapsulates and really gravitates towards the old-fashioned stereotypes and the old-fashioned roles that masculinity has, but like the positive aspects of masculinity, like the gentleness, like the kindness, the politeness, genteel, I think is really cool, where he was able to take the good of what he saw
Mm.
and bring it into himself. We see him expressing himself through clothing, wearing pants that have flowers down the back. So he's not just like, I'm just gonna be this man. He's like, I'm gonna be the kind of man I want to be. So to see all these characters really come into their own and see what they bring and the uniqueness that they bring and what makes them special, and really accepting that in the end, I think is a really, yeah, universal and really amazing message to show, especially now, because we see in society, I think people are putting people into boxes a lot more than they have been in the last 5 or so years. So to see a story like this kind of brush up against that is, and to play and to be part of that world is an honor.
Harrison, you bring up an excellent point here too. One of the key themes of this film, I think, is knowing who you are. And there's this tension between hiding who you are and knowing who you are, which is interesting because you've got Cleo, who's going out of her way to hide who she is, and you've got the masked cowboy who's literally wearing a mask but feels more at home
Mm.
in their
Hmm.
identity. And I would ask you both. I would say, what do you think? How do you know, or what do you think it means to really know who you are?
That's crazy. I I don't know. I feel like so Cleo is so I feel like in the beginning she really doesn't know who she is. And I feel that to come home and to get to that place is to live through your curiosity and pick up stories all around you. And I always see people as, and everyone, myself, as, I like to say that we're all like paper mache creatures, because when we're kind of going through life and growing up and from childhood to adulthood, we meet people, and their jokes and our family members and the way that they dress and the color of our houses going, it all shapes who we are. It's like paper mache pieces kind of shaping the full colorful being that we are, and we'll never be, no human will ever be the same, because we all have these different things that kind of like land in us, and we absorb and go, oh, I really like this color, I like this joke, or I like the way that this person kind of moves their hands. I'm going to absorb that, and you don't even realize it, but then you just kind of like adopt this thing, and over the years you kind of like grow into who you are, and then after a while you're like, oh yeah, I know that these different weird quirkiness, they came from different spaces and different people and different situations and experiences, but it all together in this big mixing pot makes me who I am. And I feel like kind of Cleo goes on that journey, like she's so curious, she's just like a curious little creature throughout the entire movie, meeting these people and going through these experiences and having conversations and putting on performances, and maybe for some people not, and some people she is, and she's trying everything out and gathering pieces to kind of figure out and create who she wants to be. I don't know if that answered your question at all, but
Absolutely.
I'm
No,
gonna go
absolutely.
ahead.
Yeah, no, that was wonderful. I'd love to hear from Harrison too. That was,
Yeah.
but for sure. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, yeah, I think there's something about the masked cowboy and a character that is literally wearing a mask that you can be like, oh, he's hiding. But I think there's something about the masked cowboy that it's actually he's choosing who he lets in. And I think as a trans person, I can understand, as a cis passing trans person, I understand what it is to trust somebody with my identity. The reality is the world isn't always safe for trans individuals, and we see it through the masked cowboy. The part of him being trans is never talked about in the script, and I think that's a lovely thing. But there's a scene where he's a victim of violence, and because people knew who he was in that moment, and there's something to be said about that. Just because I'm wearing a mask does not mean that I'm ashamed of myself. It's self-preservation. It's protecting. I know for me, being a trans individual and a hockey player, like I can understand when I step into a male locker room, I don't necessarily tell people my identity because I'm not sure if it's a safe environment for me. So I think it's a safety measure. And also the confidence of being like, I'm secure in myself and I can pick and choose who I let into my world, and there's a power in that. So I think he's taking the power back by wearing that mask and wearing it proudly.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I love, see, this is what I love about the tension of this world is each of these characters are living this similar conversations, but in completely different places.
Hmm.
And I know, like, we're starting to run out of time, but before we wrap, I wanted to ask you about labels. Because this is one of those films where freak is the new F word, if you will. And it's interesting how quickly it's snuffed out, in these moments. It's like, well, no, this word holds so much power. And I would love to ask you both about what is culture in culture and in this film and in our world is the toxicity of labels, because I really think that they can do severe damage to people as they're trying to find their way.
Harrison, do you want to go first?
It's a big question, I
It's
admit.
a big
Yeah.
question. It's a big question. It's a good
Sorry.
question. Yeah, I think that there's something that I say about this film is people are letting their freak flag fly, and it's an empowering thing. And I think language and slurs and reclaiming things, there's a lot of power in that. But there's also danger in that too, like in society and being an out visible trans person. I'm quite active on social media and I get called slurs quite often. And the language that has been used and to dehumanize a community has been very, very prevalent for the last 5+ years. We're just seeing it ramp up even more. And I think it gives permission for people to say that they're against a community in a way, and the language is important. But I think there's a power in reclaiming words and owning words. And for me, the word freak, especially in this movie, like I think when we call ourselves that, it's a term of endearment. But if somebody else from the outside calls us that, it's violence. And I think there's a fine line that we can see. And I think movies like The Bearded Girl, where you can empathize with a certain group and see the outside judging them, those are the stories that I want to tell. Those are the stories that can change people's minds and open up other people's minds to different lived experiences. Like this world's obviously very fantasy, but we can project what we want to put on that, whether that's LGBTQ plus individuals, minorities. I think there's a universal message that's why we are attracted to movies like Avatar, like Lord of the Rings, and things like that. And I think this movie's an added to that type of conversation.
Yeah, and I feel like a part of Cleo's journey and the reason why she wanted to kind of get out of there was because she was feeling the pressure and feeling like Harrison was saying that, outside normies as they're called in
Normies and
our movie,
freaks.
normies and freaks, and the way that they kind of view us from the outside, um and just feeling like there was a label on her and a pressure on her to do something specific and be something specific and fit into this box in her own world that she grew up in, but then went outside to the normies and experienced the same kind of thing from them too, just in a different way. And it wasn't, it was similar, but it in her mind when she was there and then moving out, and just like coming to the realization of like you can be anything. You really don't need to put yourself in a box. And like I was saying before, kind of tying back into, you really can't make people love you and you can't make people understand you if they're not willing to meet you where you're at. And just, I suppose, not letting people put you in those boxes. And I think Cleo did come to that realization and was like, I can be whoever the F I want. And I'm not going to listen to all of these people around. If I'm going to work with you, mom, I want to change some things, and you can't put me in a box either, because I'm not happy in either of these places if I have all of these voices and these opinions about me. Yeah.
Well, I honestly, I appreciate it. It's such a wonderful film. I really appreciate the chance to chat with you about it. I'm speaking with Anwen O'Driscoll and Harrison Browne, the stars of The Bearded Girl, a film which I hope helps break some boxes and lets people let their freak flag fly. Uh,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Hell yeah.
Thank you both so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thanks for
Thank
having
you
us.
so
Thanks so
much.
much.
Great
Have
to
a great
talk to
day.
you.
Great talking to you too. Thanks.
Thank